Uh, Welcome, everyone. We've got some great content for you today, as you can see from the agenda. After some brief intros, we're going to explore where you can find the digital quick wins and where digital tools can enhance your operating model. Then Leicester City Council is going to share their digital transformation journey, highlighting their objectives, their approach, the challenge, and lessons learned. A lot of really insightful content there. And then we're going to share a demo, try and bring it to life for you with help you to actually visualize the way digital tools can help you free staff for your digital transformation program. And then our panel discussion will dig in a little bit deeper with a few key digital transformation challenges. And we'll wrap up by sharing some assets with you that might help you get started. And then we set aside 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. On the call today, we've got Anita Chandra and Scott Lewis from Leicester City Council, Marco Machewski and myself from T-Impact, and we've got Karen Clark, who's facilitating the discussion and the quality and the Q&A. Just to introduce T-Impact quickly, as a digital transformation specialist, we've got a long track record designing, improving, and automating customer journeys or business processes, whichever term you like. One of our flagship projects is the work we've done with NHS Blood and Transplantation, where we help them to build an organ donation solution. That's a national solution that supports all 7 major organ transplants across the entire UK. It's used to decide who receives an organ from donors and manages the offers up to the point of transplant. It's a life-critical system that's heavily regulated and operates 24/7. Excuse me. And we're very proud of the work we do with all of our customers, but we're particularly proud of this work we've done with NHS on the ODT solution, where the benefits are calculated in the number of lives saved. As an organization, we've also delivered solutions across 6 local councils, including Leicester City Council, who's on the call today. So we wanted to start off and just kind of focus your attention on where you could get started with your digital transformation journey, or if you're already in flight, maybe to validate or challenge some of your thinking. Most of the healthcare and local councils that we speak to support a large number of services. Leicester is going to talk to you about the 900 services that they support. These services are typically categorized as simple, or a resident or a patient needs support. It's pretty straightforward. They request a service, they get it. Sometimes they request a service and it's not really what you provide, so you signpost them or guide them where to go. The second category is assisted, where they may need a bit of help, either because the service needs some risk assessment to be performed by the council or the healthcare organization, or it may be that they just need that bit of extra help to help them work through the service and their request. And the complex services, which often require multiple agencies or multiple services across the organization. And most of the organizations we're working with are really trying to free up resources to focus on this very complex and very high value work, the things that really can make a difference in people's lives. While meanwhile creating capacity for people that need a bit more support as they go through their digital transformation. So as a public sector offering, you can't choose to leave people behind. You can't say, if you can't get on the web, if you can't use social media, if you can't use a chatbot, we're not going to support you. We have to continue offering those who may not be comfortable with those. So that takes additional capacity from your staff, in addition to the capacity you have to invest into the program and BAU. So with all these extra demands on your staff capacity and the cutbacks we know that we're all facing with what's going on in the world today, how do you balance the book? Where do you find the way to free staff up? And what we're seeing increasingly is that people are looking for these digital quick wins, typically starting with the simple services. It's well contained, it's easy to understand. And there's a real gold star is where we can do that without changing any of the existing IT systems. So we can come in, deliver some capability on top of what's there already. So if we think about that within the context of your operating model, you've got customers coming in from both traditional channels and digital channels. And when they come in, their service needs to be supported. And the typical way of supporting that is humans either receive an email, a phone call, a visit, a PDF produced from somebody filling a form out on the website, and then they need to go in and work that across the IT systems that unfortunately aren't always 100% aligned to your way of working. So you see a lot of manual swivel chair integration, manual integration where people are stitching together the needs of the organization with the capabilities of the system. As we look at the digital transformation technologies, chatbots can actually communicate with customers by voice, by online chat, via social media. They can communicate in 40 languages. They can communicate in a natural language to help to determine what it is that a customer is actually seeking. What support do they need, and to guide them. It can then hand that over to robots that perform the work that has historically been done by humans, and particularly the mundane things that are just mind-numbing and so hard for people to do correctly and to do consistently. And if the robots run into a bit of a challenge with some unstructured data or with some complex decisions, they can hand over to a bit of AI to support that process flow. So the way we invite people to think about it is, the chatbot's the mouth of the solution, your robots are your hands, they do all the work, and the artificial intelligence is the brain. So when something complex needs to be dealt with, it's handed over to RPA. So I'd ask you just to kind of keep this in your mind, and we'll try and bring this to life with a demo a little bit later in this session. So I'm now going to hand over to Anita and Scott. They've got some great content to share with you today, as you've seen from the agenda. And I think it's Anita presenting first, if I remember right.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Anita Chinda. I'm the Digital Transformation Lead. I am supposed to be co-presenting with Scott today, who's the Senior Project Manager for Data, but unfortunately he's having problems getting into the network. So I will just start, and then if he's able to join us, he will. So just a bit of background about Leicester, the city. We've got a population of over 350,000 with over 120,000 households. It is a very mixed, a very diverse city, and it is ranked within the 10% of most deprived local authorities in England. Which, of course, as you know, then comes with a lot of other additional challenges. It's a unitary authority, so we are responsible for pretty much all the local authority services that are provided to our citizens. As of a couple of years ago, definitely, the Leicester population was deemed to have an average reading age of 7. And as I said, it's very diverse with dozens of spoken languages. And it is part of the East Midlands, which is deemed to have the lowest proportion of population rather that has the 5 basic digital skills. So within that context, the digital transformation team within Leicester City Council has 5 objectives. And in terms of our journey, we started off by setting these objectives, and the reason for that was for ourselves and also for our stakeholders, which included our politicians, to sign up to what was important. Why was this program set up? And the first one you see is a citizen-focused approach. And this is ensuring that we do have a multi-channel offer to all our citizens. So even though there'll always be those that would prefer to come in or would prefer to pick up the phone, for the vast majority of people that would like to do things online when they want, how they want, we make sure we have enough channels to enable them to do that. Another one is to have a digitally and data skilled workforce, because there's no point trying to push the envelope when it comes to digital transformation if the workforce isn't there with you because they're not comfortable using the skills or upskilling or adopting new ways of working. So you can see straight away that as everybody knows, digital transformation is about the people and not about the technology. So we've got the outward facing reasons why with the citizens and internally with the workforce. Data is a big plank and or big pillar, I should say, of digital transformation. And one of our objectives is decision making through insights. And this is something we're really working on, and hopefully Scott will join us in time to give more information on that. This is using data to process it efficiently, to be able to support decision making, to underpin service design and the way we deliver our services, i.e. whether they're targeted, whether they're universal, whether it's in layers, and also the timing. And then we've got the other two, which is having transformed service delivery. This is about end-to-end lean processes, making sure that we design services with the customer in mind. And the last one, with all that modernization, with all that increase in efficiency, making sure that we actually have savings where possible so that they can be plowed back into frontline services. So there's a bit of a jump there.
Sorry.
So our approach has been within the City Council. Next slide, please, Keith. Our setup is we are separate from the IT team. Some councils have digital and IT services and others don't. Ours is separate. The program is split into itself, so not so much the team, but the program itself into two areas, which is the digital and the data. And the program consists of enterprise-wide projects and also projects from the service areas. So as I said, as a unitary, we have some big hitting services like regulatory services, adult social care, children's services and education, planning services, and a lot of, and sports services is another one, and a lot of these projects are service specific. So we have the more corporate ones, or we want to do a program that is corporately adopted, if you like. So our bookings project is an example of that, and we have some that are service specific. We early on, we adopted a blueprint approach, and which is you start from the end, which is what does success look like? What do you want to see? And why that has worked with us, worked for us, is because we use this, we work with the service area to define objectives. And it is important that the service area feels that they own the process, that it's not being imposed on them. And once you get over that that hurdle, it does become easier because they're working with you and we're working with them to come up with good objectives. What would service a success look like in this area? And then we would work with them and with our IT colleagues to define solutions, to look at different options and what is best. And when that's agreed, we start building it, or we buy it, or use it from existing infrastructure. We also have this SRO approach, which is the senior responsible officer. For corporate projects, it's the lead director for transformation, amongst other things. And for service specific areas, it's always that director. And people always talk about buy-in. If you get that buy-in from the top, it does set the tone for the rest of the service area to kind of focus on what's important, and any obstacles you work together to overcome them. We also have the traditional project boards that monitor the milestones, deliverables, and benefits. On saying that, in terms of those kind of traditions, we work in an agile way. We tend to adopt agile methodologies as much as possible. I would say we have a hybrid approach. The advantage with that way is that we tend to be more fleet of foot. There's no point building something or going on this, embarking on this process. By the time you get to the end of it, it's no longer fit for purpose. Imagine if somebody is working on a Nokia 4, but by the time they finish it, everybody's on an iPhone 8. You really want to be fleet of foot. And that's why we've adopted that minimum viable product approach, and then we build on that in an iterative way. The key plank of the program, and we didn't get there straight away, but the key plank of the program now is to be benefits led. Again, what does success look like? And that way, not only does the service sign up to it, but also key stakeholders, politicians, corporate management team, they can see what do they expect? Is this worthwhile embarking on? What's the return on investment? What does it do in terms of our reputation? Whatever benefits are agreed, that's what we're working on, and we're able to sign off and say, yes, this was a success. And then the last point is just that the governance has to be in place. So we do have a digital board that meets every 2 months. It is populated by the chief operating officer, who is our chief executive, directors, and other key members of staff. We have a gateway board that operates every week, and that is for ourselves and our IT colleagues to look at different requests for digital transformation and other IT requirements, and make sure that the outcomes are coherent and consistent across the authority. So this slide just shows an example of some of the areas we work in. You've got your housing, repairs, sports, bookings, parking, and the key to this is saying that service areas need to feel that you are working with them. It doesn't mean they're always happy. It doesn't mean they feel it's the right time. It doesn't mean they're pulling in the direction you want them to all the time. But if you work with them, you have a higher chance of success than imposing on high. Sometimes there has to be a bit of imposition to get people around the table. But if we look at it from how does it benefit you, or more importantly, how does it benefit your customers, then that's usually a good point to start. So this just covers some of the areas we're working in. Some of them are corporate, so they're council-wide. They affect all services in different ways, like the bookings, the open data platform. Some of them are service-specific, like housing repairs, waste services. Some are to do with commercial outlets, like De Montfort Hall, and you've got some that are highly regulated, like regulatory services. And so that's just to say that as a transformation team, and I'm sure most people will agree with me on this call, that you have to be all things to all people. It's not about the technology, but it's about knowing that the way you'd approach something in a commercial outlet would be different to the way you'd approach it in a regulated outlet, like regulatory services, and it's different to the way you would approach it in an area like registrars and coroners that deal with births and also with deaths. And you've got people's highs, like the births and the weddings, but also the low points in their lives, like the deaths, and it all kind of is interwoven in the different solutions you come up with, but you don't go far wrong if you put the customer at the heart of it. So the next slide is just an example. I know you won't be able to see it so clearly, but it's an example of the roadmap we have for this year. This is the digital roadmap. And sorry, just checking if Scott's here. Okay, this is the digital roadmap, and it shows some of the key, not all of them, but some of the key projects and programs, sub-programs that we're working on. The advantage of having a roadmap like this is that all the team can see what you're working on, why you're working on, what's coming next. But also key stakeholders can look at it and say, okay, by 2nd of July, we would expect to have the send transport arrangements digitized. We'd expect to have the school absence tracking and penalties digitized. And on the bottom bit, which is more like sub-programs, we'd expect to have all those different areas, like corporate bookings rolled out in certain areas. We expect to have some certain online services enabled, and then they're listed out there. And then you can also track your performance, see what benefits have been accrued, see what benefits are expected, and importantly, see what's in the pipeline to make sure it mirrors, the strategic approach of your council or your organization. So the next slide is the roadmap. So I'll carry on because it looks like Scott's not been able to get on. So I'll just carry on then. This is the data portfolio, and this again, it just shows you the different projects we're working on in our data portfolio, the part of the transformation program. One of the key projects we've taken on this year is to work with different areas within the council, like our smart cities colleagues, our IT colleagues, our colleagues in planning, as supporting the business point of view on our open data platform. And once we've sorted that out, it will become more of a citywide platform where anybody that wants to know anything and everything about Leicester as a city can go onto that platform and find out more about it. So at the moment, we've populated it more with Leicester City Council information, but as time goes on, we expect to see other services like NHS, the police service, academia, being represented there so that anybody can get a holistic view of the customer. And this is the power of data. So looking at going to the next slide then. One of our key objectives, and as we put there, is to be a data-informed organization. This is about using our data to develop a personalized service to customers, to get them so that they don't always have to keep telling us the same thing every time they want to contact us, or when they contact highways, they have to give the same information to parking, or if they prove they live somewhere for their council tax or housing benefit, they have to do the same thing just to get a parking permit. It's about letting that information flow across the authority. So that is a work in progress. It is certainly something we're working on. Having an improved customer experience, using the analytics to say, well, so many people, they get to this point in our forms and then they all abandon it and pick up the phones. What is wrong with that point that puts people off? And working to improve that customer experience, not only there, but in so many other ways. I talked about the joined up customer information, tell us once. If you're changing address, why do you have to tell 10 or 12 different departments when they're all part of one organization? And in as much as that may have been acceptable 10 years ago, it's certainly not acceptable now. Intelligence-led decision-making, support and commercialization of activities, these are all things that we sit down and say, how can we use data to improve what we offer? How can we use data to quicken what we offer? How do we use data to improve that customer experience and take it to another level? How do we use data to improve the efficiencies or improve our partnerships or improve the way we use that information to do what we do in a better way? And again, we've got the smart cities agenda. I suspect a lot of cities have got some smart city, agenda. We're no different, and that's something we're working on. And of course, to support the council's strategic objectives. So some of the things on the right are things that we aim to achieve. The two that we're working on now, predictive modeling, we did a lot of that during COVID, would you believe? And again, that's I suppose a show and tell for another day, but it did go down very well. We were able to use it to predict when to release money according to the government regulations and the government policies and all that. And we'd also know when we were going to run out of money and how to address that. So it did work very well. And of course, robotic process automation, like everybody else, we want to release staff to add value where they can do that best. And there's no point people doing repetitive work when we can get a bot to do it for us. So the next slide. So just to say, the automation in Leicester City Council is currently at the proof of concept. We're doing some work in adult social care and also in housing, and that's about housing choices. There are a significant number of processes as put here that relies on that swivel chair. You're inputting it here, then you input it there, then you download it there and input it somewhere else. And what we're looking to do with automation, and I know Keith will talk about it a bit more, is to free up staff, as we said, to do other work where they can add value, where they can use skills and empathy and all those attributes that humans have that bots don't have, but at the same time leaving the bots to do this so that we can reduce things from, let's say, 2 weeks to 5 days, from 5 days to 1 hour, because again, that's the way the world is now. So the aim is to increase processing efficiency, as I've just said, improve the customer experience by minimizing wait times, reduce processing errors, and also plug the gaps between existing systems and processes. So where you have a situation where you have an old legacy system, maybe you're not in a position to change it, automated bots can actually do a really good job of plugging that gap. So just quickly onto the next slide. Just a couple more slides. One of them is the challenges, which I think we all share. We'd say that there's a lot that skills and culture can't minimize and mitigate, but a lot of it is down to that. One of it is a challenge, I would say, for Leicester City Council is undertaking wholesale transformation whilst maintaining business as usual for over 900 services. Nobody would be willing to stop so many times, okay, we're going to stop this service for 2 months whilst we transform it. It's about doing them at the right time, not minimizing the transformation that takes place, but doing it in a way that doesn't disrupt services. Again, the curse of legacy systems and interwoven behaviors. Sometimes you've had these legacy systems for 30 years, and you've had some members of staff that are married to those systems because that's their power base. And getting them away from it by introducing by introducing new systems or self-service or things like that is very hard sometimes. They feel it undermines the power or the position they have. And also some legacy systems, we just don't have the money to change them when we want. So another challenge is keeping abreast of new developments and emerging tech. This is why webinars like this is really good. You get to meet more people, you get to discuss pros and cons. We like to see what others are doing, building on the shoulders of, standing on the shoulders of giants. We also like to adopt this way of doing discovery work. Will this work? How would it work? How would we adapt it? How would we adopt it? Another one is winning hearts and minds at pace. I think we all know we have to win hearts and minds, but the at pace is key. Again, there's no point spending 3 years building a Nokia 4 when everybody has moved on to the iPhone 7 or Samsung 8. You have to get people with you, but in a way that doesn't take so long that it becomes irrelevant, really. The other one is a heavy reliance on an IT function. Our IT department is quite large, and it has to support 6,000 people. And the problem is when you've got so much going on with business as usual, it is hard for them, I suppose, to find the time to commit to being in that fleet-footed, new ways of working, digital, let's try this, let's not try this, we want this yesterday, we want this in 2 days' time. So there is that tension of, we want this in a quick way, we want to do it like this, it may not go anywhere, but the discovery is important. Balancing that with the business as usual, this is the way we have to keep the show on the road here. So threading that needle in any organization is is difficult at the best of times. So then money and time is another issue where we want more money than we can ever have, and also the time to do things, the time sometimes it takes to go through different boards and different panels and all that. Even though I should say Leicester is quite flexible in that way, but sometimes, it's also something that we have to take into account. So as we change slides, the last one is realizing the benefits. That is very important, making sure that the benefits are agreed with the service area. They don't always want to agree that what we're going to do is going to save them 20 hours a week. But if it does, it has to be said. And then we look at ways that we can say, well, what will happen with those 20 hours? So the last one is the recommendations and lessons learned. Collaborative working with your IT colleagues, whether they're part of the same team or a separate team, is crucial. You can do so much more if everybody's working in the same direction. Another key thing, do something. Don't plan for years. As I said, the example with the phones, just get going. Sometimes go for the low-hanging fruit, work with the willing. You can use that to show people, hey, this is not a bad thing. Let's do it. Do something. Agile, we would say, is a really good way. We like it because you can be very flexible, very fleet of foot, and you work with that minimum viable product, and then you build. Key point, don't boil the ocean. Try and take it where possible in small chunks. You can build on that. Then learn from what others are doing. Don't isolate yourself. It's the digital landscape, the digiscape moves so fast, so quickly, you can't do it alone. And also there's no point starting from scratch when your council up the road or another side of the country has done the same things. You can learn from them, lessons learned, what rabbit holes to avoid and what things to emphasize. Don't underestimate the power of data. Data is the new oil. So then the last one is have your exit strategies ready. Once you get into a service area and things are going really well, a lot of their visions and ideas are coming alive, they don't want to let you go, but you have the rest of the council to work with. So don't get stuck in with working with a group when you can move on to others. Also, don't become the maintenance people. Hand over to them as business as usual. Don't be a stranger. Always keep in touch with the different areas to make sure it's going smoothly. Be happy to help when they need to, but move on when you can. Therefore, you can be spread across the rest of the organization. So I'll hand back to Keith now.
Anita, thank you so much. What a brilliant job, particularly on such short notice when Scott had technical issues. So I think there was some fantastic content in that, and I'm sure the attendees are going to have a number of questions. I already see the numbers popping up on the platform already. I want to take a couple of minutes just to set up the demo we're going to run through. We're going to run through the demo for you in a video, so we know it works, and then we're going to run it live, which is always a brave thing to do. It's like working with animals and children. We hope this demo will help you understand the potential for these digital technologies. And the strap line here is really, chatbots chat and robots act. And what we're trying to get across is there are different technologies that have different capabilities. Any one of these technologies could be used way outside of its core area of competence, but sticking to using the components where they add most value and integrate them where it makes sense delivers an incredibly powerful and flexible solution. So studies have shown that roughly 50% of your call volumes could be shifted onto digital channels, which gives you an opportunity to not only reduce your operating costs, free capacity for your digital transformation programs and to provide that extra support for digital inclusion. It also gives you an opportunity for personalization, for data insight, for improving customer experience. When you put a chatbot at the front end of a process, particularly where it's used in a focused way, you don't want to just turn it loose for general conversations. We're not quite at that stage yet, but it allows customers to interact with your organization anytime they want. We're approaching 24/7 operations here in the language of their choice and through their favorite social media sites or via your website, via voice, via social media, via chat. So in the demonstration I'm going to show you, we really wanted to paint a picture for how we could actually use some of this to free staff up. So as a background, we're using Brendan here, and Brendan's got early stage dementia. He wants to stay in his flat, and the council have done some really clever things to reassure his daughter that that's okay. But his daughter is worried, and as she looks into it a bit farther, she notices that he's got the wrong flat number. The council has the wrong flat number on his address. Never a problem for Brendan in the past. He just trot down the common area, pick up his mail, but she wants his mail forwarded on, so it needs to be corrected. So she's going to sign into the council's website and access a new digital service to change address. And she's going to do it all without speaking to a single person or without having to go into an office. She's been issued a PIN that confirms her authority to act as Brendan's guardian. If you bear with me. Oh. Hope you can still see that. So Brendan's daughter is going to be speaking to a chatbot. The chatbot's going to be carrying on a conversation in everyday language. And once it understands, unpicks through the general chit chat, what is it that she actually wants us to do for her? It's going to issue commands to the robot. And the robot's then going to go in and complete those services using the existing systems. In this example, we've got a local council example rather than healthcare. And they're going to change address. And because it's for a vulnerable person, it needs to be updated on a social care system, typically a Liquid Logic or Mosaic used by most councils, or by a revenue and benefits system, Northgate, Civica, et cetera. In this example, the change of address, the benefits of this is it's going to save about £9,000 worth of unloaded agent salary cost but more importantly, it's going to prevent mistakes. So mistakes such as mistakes in addresses can cause rework across the council, payment delays, legal fees, follow-up calls, which incur more cost, and that's easily 10 times the cost of actually doing the work in the first place. In our example, we don't actually have access to a Liquid Logic or Mosaic or Northgate, so we're using some proxy systems to simulate, and we're choosing two systems that most people are probably familiar with, the Amazon website and the Argos website. So what you're seeing on the screen now is a recording that Marco did for us earlier. He's going to run this live in a minute as soon as I go through this. The rectangle on the left-hand side that says timpact.com at the top, that's a terminal emulator. So that is just displaying what Marco's seeing on his mobile phone. You can see that he's on the Timpact website and he's gone to the demo site and he's choosing a link. And that's to simulate as if Brendan's daughter had gone to a council website and selected the Guardian for Vulnerable Person a link up from that site. On the right-hand side, you see a smaller box with UiPath at the top. That's a window into an Amazon Web Service cloud. Each one of those little orange boxes, it says Hector unattended. Hector is what we name our unattended robots. That shows that Hector's performed an action. So when you see those orange boxes move up the screen, that means Hector's doing additional actions. So once Brenda's daughter signs in, she's greeted by the chatbot, and she can respond with a normal English sentence. So you can see the typing there. And she's going to be asked for a PIN code, and she's going to enter PIN code 5443. The chatbot then asks the robot to verify that PIN code, and the robot checks it, looks it up in a database, returns back and says it's not valid. The chatbot then explains to the customer it's not valid in a friendly human-like language. He's asked for a second PIN code, enters 6691. Robot looks it up, it's valid, tells the chatbot communicates back to the person. Just going to pause there for a second because what's happened now is the chatbot has gone on to the next step in the flow and asked him for the postcode. Brendan's daughter's entered in TW3 3EB. The chatbot then tells the robot, go look up what addresses are valid for this, and it's displayed the addresses on the screen. And what we've done in this instance is we're displaying a pick list for Brendan's daughter to choose from rather than have her enter it manually. We could always support an other if there's an address that doesn't exist, but this way we're minimizing the risk of data entry error. So as she selects an address, we're going to confirm. So this is good for our compliance reporting. We've actually verified that the service is about to start with the data that's been selected. And the chatbot then sends instructions to the robot, and the robot's off and running. You can see on the right-hand side, or the background, this is Marco's desktop here. It's gone into Argos, and it started to change the address. Now, the robot doesn't type the address character by character. It's cutting and pasting data, so there's never a typo. It's putting the data into the corresponding data field so it doesn't accidentally put it in the wrong place. The robot's now moved on to Amazon, so there's no chance that it updates one system, gets distracted, and doesn't update the other. It will always update all the systems that are relevant. And it's now offering Brendan's daughter the opportunity to get a confirmation email. And the reason behind this is to stop repeat calls. So quite often you might find that people send in a form and then they call in a few days later and say, did that get done? Was that actually actioned? It also saves us on the amount of paper for sending out letter confirmations. So there at the very end, we saw the email confirmation where the robot had taken screen prints of the change of address, emailed it across. Marco had it displayed as a proxy there. So the real takeaway from this is the solution's been delivered without any changes to the existing IT system. It can support 40 languages, spoken or via chat. And there's an opportunity to improve customer service, building in those steps that would be quite expensive to do manually with staff in a call center. I'm now going to hand over to Marco. So Marco, if you could take over the screen display, and we're going to run the same demo for you live.
Well, no. I think you might need to add me as to share, Karen. Okay. Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hi. So I will be covering a similar scenario that Keith just presented. So on the right-hand side, you see the remote server or the machine which this would run. So that would be effectively running under the same context of what the person within the council would be doing in the office. And on the left-hand side, I'm not using a website, but rather I'm using Microsoft Teams, just to illustrate that we have other options to use different channels for this type of communication. So I will start the conversation with the robot and expressing my intent. So first, I'm just sending out a greeting. In our case, and in addition to what you just saw in the video, we have added another language. We have English and Spanish currently, for which the robot is trained. I'll pick English simpler for myself as well. And then I'll continue by expressing what do I want to do with expressing my intent. I would like to change Seth. And as you notice, I am using, so I'm typing and I've made a few typos, but the natural language recognition and translation of the chatbot still understands what I'm trying to say there. So it's offering to guide me through the next steps. So I will take the next step and continue answering and expressing my intent. So I'll have my device. Once I've entered that, the robot takes me to the next step where I enter my PIN. And you'll notice on the right-hand side, the robot itself on the remote machine would make the check for me and respond to the chatbot. And once that has been validated, the robot takes me to the next point. And as you see here in the last message, the chatbot has picked up the context of the person. So it's now using the name of the person I've been asking my original intent, to take me further into the flow. So in our case, I'll take an example, a postcode, which will cross-check. Again, this is another background process in this case for the robot. The robot is validating that for me and then give me an option from the choices that request brings. I'll pick one of the options there, and then here we come to the confirmation point where we can make the decision whether we want to do the change or not. So we are going to make the change, and the chatbot informed me that the change is being undertaken, and on the right-hand side, you see the robot now performing the changes. This takes me through the steps of each of the systems that basically the robot has been trained to do. In our case, we are in Argus at the moment and entering the data from the request. The robot makes some poses, as you see, and it's usually where it records information such as the snapshot, for example, or screenshot rather, for further recording of the trail of activities. And now we are in Amazon. You might notice that this is the latest version. Obviously, this is the current state of Amazon. It's been upgraded, and some of the icons there are different, where the robot makes the changes. and it will log me out as this would happen with the actual users. So the actual users would making sure that there is no sort of security threat as well, meaning it goes out of the system it's been using. I'll just close this one so that we can follow the next step. Obviously, the chatbot now takes me forward in asking whether I would like to be informed of the change. If I select to go yes, I need to supply the address where I want this to go. So I'm using my alias here and sending that information to the chatbot, and then the chatbot again uses the robot to make that action happen and send the email through the exchange, through the mail server. The robot is performing the action. As you see, it says finished it, and it will inform me of the state of that. So as you see, it's told me that it's all been done. So if I go to my inbox, you see that I have received the verification of that change and with the appropriate focused information about that, the change I've made. So with that, this is where I finish my demo, and I'll hand over to Karen to continue the thank you.
Thanks, Marco. I'm conscious of the time, and we've got a couple of questions at the end. So we're going to have a couple of panel discussion questions and then move straight into Q&A. So this one's for Anita and Scott. Thank you, Scott. He's back with us, and Keith. So how would you advise any organisation on how to convince decision makers to take a more holistic approach to transformation efforts and not just focus on technology? Anita?
I would, I'd say, I suppose you just have to remind them of the environment we live in. You know, the fact is we have a whole generation of people that don't know any different. They've been brought up on the iPads and the smartphones, and they don't know that it's not on their radar to walk down to the nearest customer service center or to have to put on their laptop and then just go online like that, or to pick up the phone. They want to do things on the go. And I think this is where data does come in. Show them the statistics, how many people prefer to do their transactions, be it personal or professional, on the go. And also set out a vision, not just different service areas, but have that wider organization-wide vision. What does success look like? What do you want to be like? And even in local authorities where you have members, say this is what your customers want. A good idea is to do some user research, hear from the users, what do they want to see and how. Let's take it as read. Not everybody will want to go online, but for those that do, think Amazon, think eBay. Why do they set things up in the way they do? Let's not forget, Amazon started on the phone and it's now online only, and they've got their shops, fair enough, but it's primarily online. And use that to convince them, using their own points of reference to say, this is the way we need to do it, but also make sure that it isn't in a siloed way, but make sure that we are doing it with the whole organization in mind. And I would say concentrate on the benefits, because that's actually what sells the process. The process is a means to an end, the end being delivering the benefits. Scott?
Good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for my poor network missions. I think I'd just add to that just a little bit of a twist on the word holistic, and just take it across the organization rather than just on technology. And I think that there are two kind of pitfalls. One is that people working in service areas may not necessarily know about the latest technology. And so communication is vital, kind of horizontally, to show the opportunities. And I think that works both ways. Sometimes as guys working in the digital transformation world, we're not aware of how the services work either sometimes. And, the two areas can be, ships sailing in the night and don't ever meet up together. So I think the only thing I'd add to what Anita said there is about the kind of communications, and make sure they're as broad as they can be and include as many people as you can. I know we've done it a few times, Anita, haven't we, with some of our projects where we've invited, people from across the council to join in with discovery work and certainly early stage of projects. We did the same with T-Impact a couple of weeks ago with RPA, and it's about making sure that everyone is aware as much as they can be of everything that's going on.
Heath, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say, so Anita and Scott give great answers there, very much around the behavioral aspect and the knowledge aspect, which is probably the most important of any change program. I'd like to touch on something just come from a slightly different angle. We're called into organizations quite often that have started their RPA programs and they've not been successful. And so they want some expertise to come in and help them. And what we find very often is there's a focus on the tools and the platform and building out an integration, but in really poor or really insufficient focus on what's going to make a success and what does the process actually look like today. You can't start off and build the perfect solution without understanding where you're coming from, so you understand the change of your undertaking. So you need to really understand what happens today and where you want to get to in order to define the scope of project for even the smallest transformation. So it's very much about understanding the way that people work. And the other thing that I would throw out, and this is a bit of a focus on technology, I have to admit, when you're looking at a process that humans are performing, it's limited by the number of humans that you can throw at a task at any point in time, the expense of using humans, the things that we're good at and the things we're not good at. When you look at things like robots and chatbots and artificial intelligence, all of a sudden scaling becomes very cheap. So you could do things that you would never think of doing with a human workforce. An example I gave when we were talking earlier was, when we were talking to some other people earlier, was there was a law firm that we worked with it. We designed a solution that went through and read every record that had been updated across their entire customer database every day. So after working hours, every night, every change record was read, and it was validated against a golden source for addresses to make sure that the address updates have been done correctly, and to check for the typical mistakes that they identified that their team performed. And we built the bot so that it would actually, built the solution so it would actually also identify who had made the mistake and whether this was the first time or if this was a recurring issue, and maybe we needed to get some of their team some training because they were really struggling to change some of the behaviors in their team. You just couldn't do that without with the traditional approach.
That's great. Thanks very much, guys. We've got 5 minutes left and we've actually got some questions. So I'd like to move on to Q&A. And if we get some time, we'll come back to panel discussion. Just before we get to that, I just wanted to share with you as well that, how you can also get started with RPA. So T-Impact, so us along with our partners UiPath, AWS and Cadence and Nova, have prepared some bundle offers that enable you to accelerate time to value. And we can also extend those bundles with chatbots, so to provide solutions similar to those shown in today's demo. So what I'll do is we'll email all of you over the next couple of days with a recording of the whole webinar, along with some links to show you what the bundles are. And if you want to learn any more, please do get in touch with us. So if we move on to Q&A now, we've got a couple of great questions here. So Anita, David is asking, from your presentation earlier, data was mentioned as the new oil. Oil is a finite resource, data isn't. Any suggestions as to how to identify the useful data and not drown in it? So Anita or Scott, if you want to take that one.
I'll have a stab at this one, Karen. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I can't remember who made that quote of data is the new oil. It was one of the American guys, wasn't it? I can't remember. Anyway,
copied it and said it during the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very good point, and it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole with data. I think certainly from a digital transformation point of view, that there are certain sets of key data which everyone will have in some way, shape, or form, and a lot of it is how the customer interacts with you. So data on incoming phone calls, for example. things like that. These are the kind of horizontal sets of data which can be used anywhere, and phone call data is a good place to start. If you have an online platform that people can interact with you, then that's another place I would say which gives you data that is reusable, if you like, on a horizontal kind of basis. I think the key is to try and avoid, how do I phrase this, process-based data. And what I mean by that is, when you get phone call data, it'll go to a queue of calls that, let's say, is to do with waste. Brilliant. So we know how many people are bringing waste. You'll then have a subsection of that which says, well, how many of those were asking for a bin that's been missed that we need to come back for? Okay, fine. So that's showing some of the failures of that process. That's brilliant data. We need it. But you can drill down so far that you almost lose sight of what it was you were looking at, and that's what I would suggest on that front. I think the other thing as well, certainly website data and kind of Google Analytics, it's a spaghetti mess, and you can very, very easily get lost in that stuff. But try and keep it at a suitable level is my kind of overall advice. I know that's a bit of a cop out, but we haven't got time to go into the full details.
Yeah, and just a quick one for David, just to say that you can also quickly divide it into, I mean, we started off address-based data, so things like bins, parking tickets, things like that, and then person-related data, benefits and all that. Just dividing it in a way or categorizing it in a way that makes sense, and then after a while you can start connecting them, if you like. So it's just starting small and building on it from there. Okay.
Thank you. Another question we've had through from Tamora is, will you have a process in place to monitor and or manage benefits realization once the handover to BAU has been completed?
Yeah, I can answer that. We do indeed, and it was a growth. It was a process for us. We actually have an officer that is the project manager for business change, and that's what she concentrates on, making sure that we realize we do our benefits profiles and making sure that those benefits are realized with the different service areas. So if the benefits are profiled, let's say for the next 5 years, then she will keep a watching brief just to make sure that people don't, go back to their old ways of working, that it is embedded, that it still makes sense, and those benefits are being realized, because if not, it defeats the purpose of doing the transformation. And also, if it turns out that after 2 years it doesn't make sense, that's a lesson learned. Do we keep on with the 5-year profile or do we not? So absolutely, yes, it will be monitored. And whilst we won't be there doing physical work, that benefits realization, benefits overview, business change embedding will continue to make sure the change is sustainable, so that, if you modernize the service by doing certain things, that service still stays modernized. And one reason why we'd also keep a watching brief is because something that's modern now in 3 years' time or 2 years may not be modern anymore. So we do want to have that continuous transformation, and that's the way you just stay modern and relevant to customers. So the answer is yes, we would.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add a little bit to what Anita said there? I think that's a great answer, Anita. And I think one thing that anybody starting on a digital transformation journey should think about is, what are their measurements for their benefits? Because, of course, we all think about monetary benefits. We all think about improved customer service, but how are you actually going to measure that? And one of the things that we always try to do with our customers is sit out at the outset and define what those benefits are, and define which one of those are, what are the performance indicators that you can actually use to measure those benefits. And quite often you have to build the measurement tools as part of the program when you're delivering it. So if it's financial and you can trace it through to a reduction in supplier contracts, reduction in labor costs, reduction in incoming call volume, fairly easy. We've got control systems in place in most organizations to measure those things, particularly if we do a good job of quantifying those in true profit and loss impacting benefits, as opposed to soft benefits like 20% of Karen's time or 10% of Marco's. But the things like customer experience, outside of net promoter score, which some people have a fairly mature measurement for that in conducting customer surveys, you need to think a bit more about how do you actually measure an improvement in the service that we're delivering to customers. And is it actually good for the customer? Is it something that you thought might be good, but actually it isn't delivering the results that you wanted? So it's a really good point, and you really need to think through how it's going to be measured, where that data is going to come from, and do you need to generate that data as part of the program that you're delivering?
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to throw one more in because we've still got quite a lot of people on the call. If obviously if you guys need to drop off, great, we'll send you out the recording. So this is one of the basic questions we hear a lot, Keith. So how do you identify the processes that could be improved with digital technologies?
Sorry, was that one to me first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the approach we use for that is we've got a technique we've put together to help fast track this for our customers. We call it the opportunity assessment or organizational assessment, depending on the breadth. And what we do is we get a cross-functional team together to bring forth their ideas, give them a bit of education to understand the tools that you're actually using, whether it be RPA, workflow, artificial intelligence, chatbots, what they're good for and what they're not. And then we'll quickly prioritize that using 4 key factors, which are, is it suitable for the technology? Is it going to give us a good, is it going to generate sufficient business value that is likely to give us a good return on investment? Is it being delivered in an area where they're willing to accept the change, or are we trying to deliver a change into an organization that's already too busy? And how complex is it? Because you don't want to start with your most complex projects, but you don't want them to be so simple that they don't really aren't really going to convince anybody to go with the technology. So we use those 4, and then we do what we call a shallow dive, where we map out the process. We look at the steps across the process without too much focus on exceptions, really the happy path and the major exception processing. And we identify which one of those activities could be automated, and where those activities can be automated. We do some very, very simple activity-based costing to determine the amount of effort that goes into it today, and how much, just broadly with the first pass of benefits, could we reduce the human effort, and we wrap that up with a quick benefit analysis. We look a bit broader than just labor savings. So then we've got all the parameters for a business case. We understand what the benefits are. We understand the drivers. That may evolve over the life of the project, but we've got a pretty good understanding at the outset. We understand the scope of the project, the steps that are involved, and which of those can be automated. And from that, we can determine the cost. We understand the change appetite, and we understand the complexity.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Can I just add, can I just add a bit to that?
Yep.
Yeah. I think so it just kind of loops back to kind of the question David asked as well about identifying the useful data. So this is going back a couple of years now, or maybe 3 years actually. It must be 2018 when, as part of the digital transformation program, we were trying to do that, not necessarily with RPA at that point in time, but trying to identify, well, where is the low-hanging fruit, if you like, where are the quick wins and where are all these things. And that's where we turned back to those kind of sets of data I mentioned before. So, well, what's our highest call volume? Where do we need to digitize a service? Where are we as a council kind of still receiving all these calls no matter what we've done before? And almost use that data to ask the question. And that's kind of the key part I missed, I think, out of the answer to David, which is when you're dealing with data, don't necessarily think about the data, think about the question you're asking of it. And that helps not to drown as well, because then you focus on the answer that you're trying to get. But I think those things about look around at what is going on currently within the organization is absolutely vital to that. There may be things that are huge problems, as Keith mentioned, but they're just not ready. They're too busy. Just take the last year, we've all experienced the pandemic, and we've all had to do kind of different things in our daily lives. And is that the right time to change a process whilst you're too busy doing something else? No, it's not. Think about your technological roadmap as well, in terms of which systems are going to be changed or reviewed or etc. in the next few years. There's all those clues that you will already have somewhere in your organization. They're the ones to pick up on to help identify things. I just wanted to add that.
Okay. I've literally got one more question. If you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
And Tamora, Tamora's asking, what happens to the services that are not suitable for the technology or change? Would you recommend looking at alternatives at a later date if appropriate? So who would like to take that?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, okay, you go on then. Yeah.
If I start, I would say the answer to that is we very rarely say no here, but what we say is not yet. If you see what I mean. So the last thing you want to do is to kind of turn those people off to this whole kind of wonderful world by just blankly saying no, you're too chaotic, or you're not in the right place, or you're too busy. So there's always the yes but not yet kind of get out card, I suppose. The other thing I'd say is that, again, this is depending on individual situations, but at the same time, that buys you time to think about it. So you can almost say to them, look, we can't do that just yet, but I'll tell you what, let's have a look at, I don't know, an alternative way. Let's look at putting an e-form in instead of going whole hog with RPA just for now. There's usually a middle ground that you can find, is what I'd say. But it all comes down to kind of stakeholder management, I guess, in that sense, and keeping people on board whilst being honest. We all have finite resources as well. So yes, but not yet. It's quite a common answer for us, isn't it, at the moment, Anita?
Maybe I could pick up on just the last part of what you said there, Scott. We have finite resources, and I think that there will be some teams and services that want to improve, but you just can't make the business case for it. It's just not worth the investment. So there will be some where it's yes but not yet, or let's take away a few of these obstacles or get you through some other change that you're dealing with. But there will be some others where it's just not enough of a justification. And sometimes as we're stepping back from the detail of that and looking at that as a pattern across the council or across your healthcare organization. So for an example might be, we did some work with Decorum Council where they had environmental safety going out and spending a lot of time on customer sites. And they had to do lots of inspections. They took lots of pictures and they sent it back via mobile phone. They had updates coming from automated systems, and they had some poor souls whose job it was to intercept all these emails, take the attachment, store it on their laptop, upload it to their workflow system, and index it so it could be found by others. So they really wanted to get a solution built to automate that because it was painful, low-value work, just soul-destroying to sit there and do that all day long. And we couldn't really make a business case for it. But rather than just saying, no, there's not enough in it, we worked with their assistant director of people performance and products, and we looked across their organization at how often this pattern was replicated. And we're able to identify some pretty significant wins, none of them probably sufficient to make them the top business case to go forward with, but when you add them up in their totality, it was a stonking business case. So we could not only help environmental services, we could help housing, we could help licensing, and there was a number of people. So we're rolling that out in stages where the business case is actually broader than the first implementation, because we know that the implementation 2, 3, and 4 is going to add to that.
Right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for all of those that stayed behind and listened to the additional 10 minutes. We hope you found today's session informative, and you'll also be able to use the content to help with your organisation's digital transformation progress. Of course, please get in touch if you'd like any more information, and we will be in touch with the recording soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.